The presidents of Burundi, Swaziland, Tanzania, Ivory Coast, and now Haiti have all been assassinated over the last few months. 5 presidents. It's not even on the news. All 5 of them were presidents that said the vaccine would never be allowed in their country.
And he refused to buy the vaccines from COVAX. He talked bad about the PCR test. He didn't believe that it was too useful in detecting coronavirus.
Didn't he stage a kind of public stunt to mock the PCR test where he...
Yes, on state television, they did a COVID test on, I think it was a pawpaw, which is like a fruit, and a goat's motor oil. And they all came back positive. And he was like, listen, we're not going to shut down the economy because of these tests. They obviously aren't working.
John Magufuli, Tanzania. Magufuli was a prominent skeptic of COVID-19 vaccines and lockdowns. He died on March 17, 2021, at the age of 61. His cause of death was officially reported as heart failure, but his family alleged that he was poisoned.
Tanzania is in national mourning for the next 2 weeks following the death of President John Magufuli. The late president had downplayed its dangers, previously claiming that Tanzania had defeated the virus through prayer.
Western media's portrayal of Magufuli, although positive in the early stages of his career, quickly developed into an all-out smear campaign, especially during the COVID pandemic, when Magufuli refused to implement any major lockdowns or mask mandates. And when he unexpectedly died in March of 2021, Western media was slow to show empathy. The main source of mainstream media reporting came from this guy, Tundu Lissu. He was also formerly employed by the World Resource Institute. This institute is funded by some of the same entities I mentioned earlier, like Bill Gates, Rockefeller, and Shell, and tech companies like Google.
2 years ago, on March 22, 2021, Tanzanian President John Magufuli was buried amidst much public sympathy. Unfortunately, he is only the best-known case in a whole series of sudden and mysterious deaths of influential personalities who stand out for their stance against global corona politics and were, as it were, buried with them.
Tanzania.
Magufuli became known internationally when he publicly questioned the suitability of PCR tests and ended their use and the collection of corona statistics. He was one of the few government leaders in the world to resist pressure to introduce coercive measures against his people. In June 2020, he declared his country corona-free. His people subsequently re-elected him on October 28 with 84%. After rejecting corona vaccinations in early 2021 because they had not been adequately tested, an article sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation appeared in The Guardian newspaper on February 8th, declaring Magufuli a public health threat. A few days later, from February 12th to 22nd, Tanzania saw a series of deaths of high-ranking politicians.
Japan has officially launched a COVID mRNA task force to investigate alleged crimes against humanity perpetrated during the COVID pandemic, specifically related to the rollout of the experimental mRNA vaccines. According to Japanese prosecutors, the vaccines are causing the greatest human mass die-off in thousands of years, and the culprits must be identified and held responsible for the pain and suffering they have caused. The investigators also have a dire warning for those of us in the West. Do not listen to the mainstream media and Big Pharma, as they are not engaged in science, but rather a eugenics experiment, and they've proven themselves to be enemies of the people.
The Minister of Labor from a traffic accident, the Chief Secretary to the President, and a long-time permanent secretary from unknown causes. In addition, the Vice President of Zanzibar and the head of the Bank of Tanzania died of COVID-19. President Magufuli was last seen in public in late February, and his death was announced in March. After Magufuli's death, his successor Hassan reinstated corona case registration for Tanzania on April 6th and launched a vaccination campaign soon after.
Burundi.
President Pierre Nkurunziza expelled WHO representatives from the country on May 12, 2020, because he did not want any interference. He strictly rejected a lockdown and described the pandemic as a hoax. Pierre Nkurunziza died of a heart attack on June 8, 2020, at the age of 55.
Eswatini.
Prime Minister Ambrose Mantvulo Dlamini wanted to fight the pandemic through his own efforts and further expand the health structures already in place in his country. He died on December 13, 2020, at the age of 52. Two of his ministers followed shortly thereafter in January. COVID-19 was listed as the cause of death for all of them. The government ordered 1.3 million vaccine doses for Eswatini as recently as January, and vaccinations with AstraZeneca began in March.
South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Malawi.
By January 2021, 12 politicians had died in South Africa and 4 ministers in neighboring Zimbabwe within the space of a week. The events in Malawi were particularly striking. There, a court found that a lockdown would unfairly affect the poor population, whereupon the government did not impose one. Then, within 48 hours, 3 sitting ministers and the former head of the central bank died, all from COVID-19. 6 days after the deaths, the Malawi government imposed a lockdown for the first time, and vaccinations with AstraZeneca began in March.
Haiti.
In Haiti, neither authorities nor the country's people complied with corona measures, and treatment centers closed due to too few patients. More than 700,000 doses of AstraZeneca were rejected in May, and another 130,000 doses in June because of possible side effects. Accordingly, authorities repeatedly halted imports of corona vaccine, making Haiti the last country in the Americas not to begin vaccination in June 2021. On the night of July 7th, 28 heavily armed men advanced on the home of President Jovenel Moïse. Some penetrated to his bedroom and shot him. After Moïse's death, massive unrest broke out in the country. Unaffected by this, a broad-based vaccination campaign was launched in Haiti shortly thereafter.
Germany.
In the fall of 2023, influential men announced opposition to a second lockdown: Thomas Oppermann, Mario Ohoven, and Franz Klein. Thomas Oppermann was vice president of the German Bundestag, and he sharply criticized Chancellor Merkel for trying to push through the corona measures without parliamentary involvement. At the end of October, he called for a general debate on the restrictions of basic rights. He was about to present his position on October 25th in the ZDF program Berlin Direct, when he, at 66 years of age, suddenly collapsed and died. Cause of death unexplained. Mario Ohoven had been president of the German Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Businesses since 1998. He wrote directly to the German Chancellor several times to prevent a second lockdown. In a published appeal on October 29th, the following was questioned, and I quote, "Whether the measures are also proportionate in a legal sense and thus in line with our Constitution. As an association, we will initiate such a review in the interests of small and medium-sized enterprises. In the end, there could be an appeal to the Federal Constitutional Court." 2 days later, Ohoven's vehicle crashed into the center guardrail on the highway for an unexplained reason, killing him. Franz Klein was the head of the Hamburg Hotel and Restaurant Association. When the Infection Protection Act was to be tightened in November, the association announced a lawsuit before the Federal Constitutional Court. 2 days later, Franz Klein died suddenly and unexpectedly at the age of 72. From November 2nd, a renewed lockdown was enforced in Germany, which was tightened in December, only after 4 months were gradual easings adopted. In the meantime, the vaccination campaign, which was massively advertised as the only way out of the pandemic, had begun.
It shoots a tiny dart made of ice that would lodge into the skin, leaving only a small red dot. Each of these darts are loaded with a deadly poison from shellfish. And once inside the body, the poison disrupts nerve signals, which paralyzes muscles. This would cause the heart to beat in a weird, uneven rhythm until it completely stopped, killing the person within minutes. These guns were used by the CIA to take out people without leaving a trace, making it look like a heart attack.
I'm a practicing doctor in an emergency department, and I must unfortunately obscure my identity on account of the governing regulatory body being on the prowl for those speaking out against the national COVID vaccination program. But I am blowing the whistle. I'm increasingly perplexed at the continued government backing of a medical intervention marred by serious complications in the young when there are zero benefits this treatment offers them. The Phase 3 safety trial for 5 to 11-year-olds featured a mere 600 or so subjects receiving the test substance, and in that 6-month preliminary study there were no reported serious adverse side effects from it. The study then goes on to say there are always serious complications that can arise thereafter, but these are unpredictable. Well, since we've actually seen an overall spike in the number of cases of myocarditis and pericarditis in the young since the beginning of the COVID vaccination program, and exclusively following administration of the Pfizer Comirnaty and Moderna Spikevax vaccines, one can logically put 2 and 2 together and surmise that the vaccine had something to do with these serious complications.
In Colorado, in fact, 25% of the deaths counted as COVID deaths don't even have COVID on the death certificate. Let that sink in for a moment. You'd literally get shouted down, insulted, or more likely permanently banned from social media like Twitter and Facebook for putting out the truth.